Hello and welcome to the CBB Supershow, brought to you by the FTN Network. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dub Deuces 85, that niche sports connoisseur and college basketball aficionado. We are officially into the Sweet 16 of the NCAA Tournament, and this is really going way too fast. It's making me kind of sad. I just don't want college basketball to end. It's just way too much fun. That was a great first and second round of the tournament. Say what you will, maybe there wasn't enough upsets for you, but there were some definite, like, really good games, close ones. We haven't had the pure chaos that maybe I thought we were going to have. I did expect a lot of parity in this tournament. I think a lot of the pure chaos that we got in the conference tournaments led to what we're seeing now. A lot of teams that got in, bid stealers. It may have made the road a little bit easier for some, and some of those teams were probably just tired out from big runs. One team that's not tired out from a long stretch is your NC State Wolfpack, who not only won 5 games in 5 nights to win the ACC tournament, they have won 2 games in the NCAA tournament, and now they are into the Sweet 16. Man, that is a great story. That NC State team is awesome. Now they're facing a Marquette squad that, I don't know. Marquette, the way they're playing defensively, shots, Cam Jones making shots, Tyler Kolek's playing well. Obviously, he's not hurt whatsoever, but that NC State team, Mo Diarra peaking at the right time. DJ Horn had a bad game last time against Oakland. They still pulled it out. That's going to be a fun one. That is one I'm really, really looking forward to. But overall, it's been a pretty chalky tournament, right? The 1 seeds, they're all through. The 2 seeds, they're all through. We lost a couple of 3s. We got 3s in. Baylor got knocked out. Baylor was one of the teams. It was a really awful bracket for me. I thought Baylor was going to be a Final Four team. That was not the case. Shout out to Mike Randall for absolutely crushing his Clemson call. He said Clemson was going to waltz to the Final Four. They beat New Mexico team. He's the only one in the world who thought they would do that. And then they beat Baylor. And honestly, Baylor just was never engaged in that game. No explanation for that one. Arizona versus Clemson. I don't know how that one's going to turn out. Obviously, most people would say Arizona will win. But at this point, I'm not ready to doubt this Clemson team. And as the PJ Hall, the president of the PJ Hall fan club, it's time to really start looking at Clemson as a team that maybe they're going to make a little bit more of a run here. The Vols, the team that I've hitched my wagon to once again, got to have them beat Creighton in all my player draft leagues. I have Vols stacks. Really, pretty much all I have left are the Vols and Manny Sharp in those leagues. Got to have the Vols continue to win. That's going to be an interesting one against Creighton. I do think they can wear them down. Gonzaga, doubt them never, no more. Gonzaga's roster, it's the weakest roster they've had in a very long time. I don't know that anyone could really argue that, but Mark Few is just the absolute definition of what I would call a based god. He is way too good. They don't lose in the first round. They don't lose in the Sweet 16 or the second round. They just continue to cruise to the Sweet 16, and they did it again, easily dispatching a McNeese State. I admit I was McNeese State crazy. I thought with Will Wade they were going to absolutely just ruin Gonzaga. But that wasn't the case. And looking at it, they did a very good job defensively on them. McNeese State, just the athleticism of the Gonzaga Bulldogs in that game. It was such a huge disparity, right? Like, there was just no contest there. Shots were not being made by McNeese. They couldn't get anything done in the paint. Like, it was really, I was watching that game. Story time. We my kids I had birthdays galore for all like 19 of the kids that I got last week. And during that game, we went to Red Robin for my youngest daughter because that's where she wanted to go. So during the birthday dinner, I got my 2-year-old son who is just, completely incapable of sitting still. We don't take him to restaurants because he is such like a hellion, as my grandfather would say. He's a hellion. And I was watching the McNeese game. Like I even had the lady, the server change the channel because it was on a different game, and I had her turn on the McNeese game so I could watch it, whatever. So I've got my 2-year-old like climbing the seats next to me, trying to get to the other people on the other side while I'm also watching Gonzaga just obliterate one of my Sweet 16 teams that I had really invested a lot of time, money, and effort into. It was a real good time. And so now they got to face Purdue. Purdue just completely the dismantling of Utah State that we saw. Like, wow, Utah State couldn't make a shot. That's important. If you're going to play Purdue, you're not going to stop Zach Edey. He's going to get calls. He's going to out rebound you. He's going to score in the paint. You have to make shots. Utah State didn't make shots. They got blasted, absolutely blasted. The Mountain West down to one team. But the nice thing is your Washington Huskies, right? Get Coach Danny Sprinkle. He will be the new head coach of the basketball program. In case you're wondering how I feel about it, I'm a little bit I'm excited about it to a degree, but I really wanted Will Conroy to get the job, former Husky player and really just super assistant who is a really great recruiter in the Seattle area and beyond. And I just hope he gets retained. I hope Quincy Pondexter gets retained as well. We've recruited well with Lorenzo Romar. We've recruited well with Mike Hopkins. And a lot of that has been because Will Conroy and Quincy Pondexter. So those two need to be retained at all costs. I would have liked to have seen Will Conroy get the job, but hard to argue with Sprinkle. He wins everywhere he goes. Jumping around here, Duke absolutely dispatches of James Madison. So the possible Cinderella teams just absolutely got obliterated. San Diego State took Yale apart very easily. And Houston, arguably the most exciting second round game. There were a couple, but Houston versus Texas A&M. That Texas A&M team really showed us something. I wish it's a damn shame that they had to play Houston in the second round. I wish that they could have gotten maybe like a 7 seed just to avoid the 1, because I think that team could have been capable of a second weekend run. Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford, that duo just played as well as anybody. But Jamal Shed is easily one of the best point guards in the country next to Tyler Kolek, and he got it done. So Houston versus Duke, that's going to be a fun game for sure. I'm obviously going to be all over Houston. Do they have enough to beat that Duke team? I think so, especially if Juwan Roberts healthy, playing 30-plus minutes like he did against the Aggies. UConn, still nobody's beating UConn. There's no point in even entertaining the thought of them losing. I know Northwestern, a lot of people liked them. They're a fun team. They had no answer for Donovan Clingan on the interior without Matthew Nicholson. Some people were talking about it wouldn't have mattered if Nicholson played. Donovan Clingan, when he's not in foul trouble playing that way, good luck trying to beat UConn, especially on a day where Alex Karaban wasn't that great. Cam Spencer was okay. But you're going to get a game from this UConn team where all of those guys are clicking, and it's going to be a masterful performance. But the nice thing is they don't all have to be going off at the same time. The guards struggle, Clingan picks it up. Clingan's in foul trouble, the guards pick it up. You haven't even seen an Alex Karaban game yet. That might be coming here against the Aztecs. Fun matchup brewing between Clingan and Jadon Lede. We'll see how that shakes out. But at this point, like I said, no point in entertaining anything other than a UConn national championship back-to-back. I do not see any other scenario playing out. And then in KenPom, Illinois has now hit they're the number 1 rated offense. They're playing Iowa State, the number 1 rated defense. They've now usurped Houston. Something's got to give there. That's going to be a really interesting matchup. Contrasting styles there. Probably the game that I have the least, as far as making predictions on games, my confidence level is the lowest in that one. I don't think I have a very good handle on that one. I'm not going to be betting it, certainly, but I'm going to be curious to see how that one plays out. But I'll be rooting mostly for the Wolfpack to make it to another round there. I know we have a lot of Wolfpack fans in the audience there, so you guys can probably appreciate that. They're currently going to be the America's team here while the Huskies are on the sidelines. All right, if you're new to the Super Show, what we do here is cover college basketball from DFS, prize picks, prop betting, overall betting, opportunities. We talk about brackets this time of year as well, and just overall be talking about college basketball because that is our thing. We also do college football. That'll be coming before you know it, and the CFB version of the Super Show will be doing its thing. There'll be previews for both sports all summer long. With this being said, please, veterans of the show, take your seats. Newcomers, go ahead and find a spot there in the front if you'd like. Everybody come together. The best way you can help this program continue to thrive is by smashing that like button, giving us interactions, impressions, all of that good stuff. YouTube's algorithm is king. So right now, this time of year, everybody's searching March Madness, college basketball, bracket stuff. You're going to help us get those views and get into the, the top of the YouTube algo by liking this video, sharing this video, and overall commenting, interacting, and just hanging out. So I appreciate you guys who continue to do so each and every night that we've been on. We had a nice little 2 nights off there, but we're back in it. Marathon run. We will be live tonight, tomorrow night, Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. We'll have Sunday and Monday off, and then we'll be into the Final Four. Crazy enough as that is. Cool little things for me personally. I got a chance to build a little bit of a relationship with Carl Daughtry Jr. and his family, basically more of his dad. And if you guys don't know who that is, he was a player for Central Arkansas. We had Central Arkansas on a slate or two in the fall. Really liked this kid. He was underpriced, got a chance to start all day long. I was talking about, hey, if this kid gets a start, he's going to be big. And it was against Missouri. I think it was the Missouri or Oklahoma game. He did get a chance to start. I was hyping him up. He did well, just doing my thing that I normally do. And his dad reached out to me in DMs. Basically our first bit of interactions was, I don't know how you found my son over in the Pacific Northwest, but I appreciate, the coverage that you've been giving him. We got to talking and, have a relationship with him, his mom and everything. And it's just a cool thing. They, decided to go in the portal, allowed me to break that news. I'm not I'm not Tobias Bass or anything. I'm not like breaking all this portal news. I don't have access to all of that stuff, but this is a player that I have a great interest in, and truly blessed that they allowed me to do that, because it's not just DFS, not just sports betting, but also like just the media in general. This is something that I want to do. So really working with them every day. They're telling me what schools have reached out to them. So it's a really cool thing. And speaking of which, Tobias Bass, not sure if you guys are familiar with his work. He is one of the big, CBB guys over at The Athletic, constantly breaking news, very sharp guy, very in tune, plugged in. He has agreed to come on a show after the tournament. We're going to talk about portal happenings and overall just talk about college basketball and everything. So lots of fun stuff planned here for the foreseeable future. Even when the season ends, it's not truly over. So if you like college basketball, you like, this kind of thing, please continue to support the show because we have a lot of fun things planned and a lot of different guests. And seems like we might be getting into a little bit of an opportunity here to talk with others in the industry. Maybe we'll reach out to John Fanta even, down the road. So that's what's going on in the pipeline. Just wanted to share that with you guys. I'm very excited about it and really hopeful that Carl gets a chance to go to a team that's going to start him, but also utilize his unique scoring ability. He has been reached out to by Cal State Fullerton, which is not like down the road for me or anything, but closer. So, I might be able to go see some games. But wherever he goes, I'm just going to be happy to support him. And definitely a player that has become one of my favorites, just this season alone. All right, so what we're going to do here tonight, we're going to talk about the 2-game NIT slate. We had a little NIT action tonight with Indiana State. Most of the FTN room provided us some green screen, so we like to see that. So we're going to go over this 2-gamer, talk about any, thing that sticks out to us. Get my first impressions on the 4-game Sweet 16 Day 1 slate. We will be live tomorrow. We'll have guest host for that one. That'll allow us to, break down the slate further. There'll be some prize picks talk, prop betting stuff, any betting opportunities as well, and then maybe a little bit of more bracket talk as well. There was a potential for us to have another player draft league. We were looking at a Sweet 16 player draft league. I don't think we'll have enough people to do that so quickly just because time is really not our friend right now. But if we do get 8 guys for that one, we are going to be hosting another player draft, but we might even just do a 4-player or a 4-person draft tomorrow. If you're interested in doing that at high stakes level, where basically you draft one player at each seed line left and have a team of like 4 or 5 guys. So there's a couple of things still brewing there. Bracket contest is still going on. Lots of opportunities to make money, all kinds of things. Just because we're getting down to the end of the season does not mean we won't be able to make some more money, profit, bankroll, get all that good stuff. Let's get into the slate. Let's do it. For the 2-game NIT slate, there is a little bit of reason to play that. Edge was solid. Yesterday, we had a 4-game CBI slate. If you're a true DGen like I am, there was 2 players out for Evansville. Both were like 35 to 40% owned on Showdown, which was a huge edge, obviously. So there are still people playing this. Maybe, the opportunity for making big money is not there, but there is still enough prize pools and enough edge to really pad your bankroll either way. The flagship tournament here being a 2K to first $12 level. It was very soft today. I suspect it'll be very soft tomorrow. Certainly want to look at playing these contests throughout. All right, the first game on the slate, UNLV versus Seton Hall. So we are down to the end. We're getting into the Final Four of the NIT. The Final Four will not be at the Garden. It's played at Hinkle. Legendary place. Indiana State has already booked their trip. Georgia has booked their trip as well. Georgia plays the winner of this UNLV Seton Hall game. Indiana State will play the winner of the Utah VCU game. Indiana State basically going to have their home crowd traveling well for the duration of this tournament, as they've been playing home games, but also at Hinkle. You can expect their fans to travel in their quest to prove the committee and the world wrong that they belonged in the tournament and not Virginia. All right, first game here, Seton Hall versus UNLV. Seton Hall is a 4.5-point favorite, is a total of 141. Now, the Seton Hall rotation is basically the same as it has always been. And this Seton Hall team, you certainly don't want to count out. Shaheen Holloway and the players treating this as just as important as it would be the NCAA tournament, asking all their players if they wanted to go. They did, and they're playing extremely well. They really dispatched of North Texas with ease on Saturday, 72 to 58. This was after they were pushed by St. Joe's in overtime. They did win 75 to 72. So well rested here. They get a few days off. Rotation-wise, we're going to see a lot of minutes, as usual, for Alamir Dawes, Dylan Adewusu, Dre Davis, and Kaderi Richmond. All 4 of those guys will play 32-plus minutes pretty much with ease. Jaden Bediako had some early foul issues there, couldn't get going in the North Texas game, and as it was out of hand, they didn't end up playing him more than 12 minutes in that one. Isaiah Coleman played the exciting freshman in a small ball lineup, which they were able to do, especially with North Texas not having a ton of size themselves. Like their center is 6'8", 6'9", so they didn't have to play Bediako. And they ended up running that small ball. Coleman, he played 26 minutes. Elijah Hutchins Everett played 15, and then we saw 9 from Jaquan Sanders. Typically with Seton Hall, you don't want to mess around with anyone except their starters. Bediako is kind of hit or miss for me. I don't typically prioritize him because he is the 5th option on offense always. And with his minutes kind of bouncing around there and foul issues being a problem at times, I tend to stay away unless he's very cheap. You can get away with bricking a place or 2 in these NIT slates with 2 games. So that means maybe we take a shot at somebody like Isaiah Coleman, who's priced there at 4.3. Expect a closer game against UNLV, but would you look at the past 5 games for him, even in closer matchups like the St. Joe's game, he played about 18. He has played 20 or 18 or more minutes in 3 of his last 4 games. This is going to be a key cog for them next year, assuming he doesn't transfer. A lot of the guys in front of him are out of eligibility. Coleman's going to be a really strong fantasy asset next year. This is a good opportunity to get him more minutes. So I do like him at 4.3. I think he's very much in play here, especially if you think that Bediako struggles with that UNLV front court and athleticism. He's priced at only 5.2, so I suspect he'll be relatively popular just because he's a name. Jaden Bediako, everybody knows him. He has upside. He has struggled over their past 4 games, though. 4 against North Texas, 15 against St. Joe's in that overtime game. St. John's, he had just 9. And against DePaul in a blowout win in 20 minutes, he had about 18. Now, his last big performance was in a close win over Villanova, in which he had 11 points, 12 rebounds, 31 fantasy points. I feel like this is going to be one of those hit or miss plays where if you're right on him, you're going to absolutely crush this slate. If you're wrong on him, meaning you play him and he bricks or you fade him and he goes off, you're probably going to be dead to rights. I don't like the slate hinging upon Jaden Bediako, but that's probably going to be the case. Now, stylistically and matchup-wise, I don't like this spot for him. His minutes are worrying me. He's not even getting into that much foul trouble. There's a little bit there, but lately it's just been they've gone with a different type of lineup. So for me, I want to stick with the Dre Davis, Dylan Adewusu group. Kadari Richmond's always great, 8.6. It's a pretty high price for him. He has taken a bit of a backseat lately offensively, but his peripheral stats are so strong. He had 15 rebounds against a tough North Texas team. He's always getting a ton of assists. He contributes in stocks. Like, his peripheral stats make him a very safe option. Offensively, we've seen him blow up, but in this past 4 or 5 game stretch, he has definitely taken more of a backseat at that end. That's definitely hurt his overall upside, but you can bet on a solid 35, 36 fantasy points from him. We just need maybe a little bit more here, especially if we're going to have to take some of those lower end values on this slate to get that Kadari Richmond play. I think for 500 less, and this forwards on this slate, it's not great. Dre Davis allows us to use him in the forward position there with that guard forward eligibility. He is a bit spendy at 8-1, but he's just been so rock steady. He is scoring. He's taking a lot of that offense away from Kadari Richmond, and he is still contributing in all other categories. One thing that he has done extremely well this year, and especially the last month or two of the season, is block shots with reckless abandon. His block rate has risen to over 5%. He has a combined rebounding rate over 20%, a usage rate of 22%, shot rate of 25%, and he's now shooting roughly 36% from long range. He is doing a little bit of everything, and he has steadily improved across the board on all of his numbers, not only from his time at Louisville, but his junior season at Seton Hall last year, where he was more of a role player type. He has really become a star for this team, and it's crazy because I never would have considered 8-1 for Dre Davis in the past. We're talking about a 2-game slate. Even if this was a 4-game, 5-game slate, I'd still be looking heavily at Dre Davis. I feel very confident, very comfortable with him as a core play and somebody that I'm going to utilize. It's going to save me that $500 from Kadari, and I think they're going to score relatively similar, not only from just a X value standpoint, but overall raw fantasy points as well. I'm never comfortable with Alamir Dawes, but he shoots. He has never seen a shot that he wouldn't take. At St. Joe's game, he took 20 shots, 14 of which for long range, 6 of 14. He hung 53. He has scored 30-plus fantasy points in 4 straight games. He is dialed in. He's playing every single possible minute, and he's even contributing in other categories. 10 rebounds against St. Joe's. What? 5 rebounds against North Texas. Huh? He's rebounding at a high level lately, and if that's going to continue, the 6.6 price definitely is warranted. It's tough, though, because if you haven't been using him and you pay an accelerated price for him late and he bricks, it just feels awful. So I'm on the fence there with Alamir Dawes. I haven't decided quite yet how I want to approach that. I do like Dylan Adewusu, even at the higher price of 6-1. Again, another guy offensively challenged at times. He did have 18 against St. Joe's. He had 19 against DePaul. His three-point shooting has been improved at least the last month of the season. He's taking more shots. The Seton Hall rotation, again, at 6-7 guys deep. He's just playing a ton. Even if he gets into foul trouble, we're seeing him play through it, and he's contributing in all categories as well. So another peripherals guy who does add something offensively. I think ultimately we're going to want to play at least 2 of those 4 Seton Hall guard/wings. That's just the way looking at this, the way that this is built. VCU versus Utah. Where VCU games are generally awful. Utah has like 2 guys you can really count on. So I think we're going to want plenty of this game, and that means at least 2 of these Seton Hall guys. The stack worked really well. We ran a 3-4-man Indiana State stack with Cincinnati guys. That stack worked extremely well in the 2-gamer. This might be the side to go here. Seton Hall, UNLV, 4, 5, maybe even 6 guys from this game. That could be the way we want to approach this here. Other options, again, we talked about Bediako there at 5-2. That's possible. Hutchins Everett, if you're running multiple lineups in a large field and you want a straight punt, 3.2K, nearly min price. What do we got to get out of him? Maybe 8-9 fantasy points. Definitely doable. He has scored 8+ in 5 straight games, so we can eke that out from him there potentially, especially with Bediako's minutes dwindling over time. All right. On the UNLV side, this is not a team that I expected to be here. I thought that they would drop out a little bit earlier. They have dudes, don't get me wrong. But I thought Princeton would be a hard matchup for them. They took care of business. And then they also beat a Boston College team that kind of heated up there at the end. Now, UNLV has dealt with a ton of injuries to multiple guys all season long. They have rarely had their full allotment, their full roster available to them. Now it's Luis Rodriguez, who missed their prior game, sat out in the win over BC. He hasn't played since the Mountain West Conference tournament, missing both of those games. I would suspect he ends up sitting out here. We'll see how that shakes out, but that is a really hard loss to have. He is a key player for them. What he does doesn't always show up in the box score, but he really affects the game in those ways where, yes, he determines a lot of times if they win or not. With him out, they did run a lot more Shane Noel, right? So the starting lineup, we can assume will be some form because Caleb Boone's banged up as well. Keelan Boone, Dayton Thomas, Rob Whaley, Shane Noel, and either Justin Webster or Caleb Boone. Caleb Boone came off the bench against BC. He played 24 minutes. Jackie Johnson played 13 minutes. And then Webster as a starter played 33. He's been at UNLV forever. He started their last two NIT games, 29 and 33 minutes. Shane Noel played 18 minutes, which is pretty terrible there, but he played 23 against Princeton. And as a starter in that Mountain West tournament game, he played 27. Noel has struggled offensively a lot. He is very cheap at 3.7. Assuming that Rodriguez is still out, we can look to him, and he's probably going to be a popular play. As a starter, we can expect probably a cap of 25-ish minutes there, but we don't need a whole hell of a lot from him. The value is there. We have to take a punt. Today's slate with Indiana State, Xavier Bledson, obviously Frank the Tank, he came through big for us. I don't know how he was only 35% owned. That was a gift, thankfully. Jalen Deloche on Georgia, he was a pretty decent punt if you used him. So you didn't need a big score out of those guys necessarily. You won't need a big score out of Shane Noel, but you did see against Princeton, he dropped 10, 5, and 4 before fouling out in 23 minutes. So certainly capable here, although this Seton Hall matchup is not great for him whatsoever against those aggressive Seton Hall guards. Keelan Boone is priced pretty high at 8.5. He has scored 37, 41, 37, 31, and 50 over his last 5, 2 of which includes SDSU, a tournament team in the Sweet 16. Now, Keelan Boone has always shown throughout the course of his career these big-time flashes. Seems they're really leaning on him heavily right now with all of the injuries that they have. His usage rate, his shot rate, everything is up across the board. So as far as pay-ups go, I do prefer him over Kaderi Richmond, but I prefer Davon Smith overall from Utah, which we'll get to in a second. So he's kind of a secondary look there for me. But he is a forward, which is a tougher spot to fill on this small slate. If you want to just go ahead and pay up for him and roll out that forward slot, I don't hate it. Caleb Boone is an interesting GPP look at 6'8". He can absolutely blow the doors off of that price. He can also get into foul trouble. There's a myriad of outcomes here that could happen for Caleb Boone. It's really hard to feel comfortable with him in your main lineup, but we have a 2-game slate. We're going to have to take risks. So Caleb Boone is in the player pool, but you have to be right and understand that he may give you a 5. He may give you a 6. The good news is that Seton Hall front court, it's not necessarily going to do a lot of damage there. He's not going to get into foul trouble from them. It's going to be those Seton Hall guards that drive that may cause him those issues. So we'll see how that shakes out, but he's definitely got to be in our player pool there at 6'8". Rob Whaley's a fine play at 5'8". All the injuries have benefited him. We've seen him play a much bigger role. He's been a hit or miss fantasy option, but I think he's going to end up being one of those last man in types. We need a forward. We've got about 6K. We can play Rob Whaley. So not a ringing endorsement for him, but he's definitely a guy that I'm probably going to end up in my main lineup with. That leaves 2 other players that we're really going to look, 3 that we're going to look at. Jackie Johnson, who is a value at 3.5, pretty much playing 13 to 15 minutes. It's only 200 more for Noel. He's the direct pivot off of Achaki or Noel in a alt build. capable of maybe outscoring Noel if he gets into foul trouble or just is overall ineffective. Johnson is an interesting look there. At 4-7, you have Justin Webster, who has scored 20-plus fantasy points in 3 straight games, solidly 29 and 33 minutes in each of the NIT games. So you can look there as well as another value piece. And then Dedan Thomas at 7-3, who has an enormous amount of upside, is a really intriguing look. I think he's going to be an absolute stud in the future here, and he's shown those flashes here this year. This could turn into a game where he battles it out with Trey Davis and or Kaderi Richmond. I think he's somebody that I'm wanting to get to. More of a luxury play as opposed to a priority. Not sure we will be able to get there, but he's definitely a guy that I have a lot of interest in and want to get into my various lineups if I can. Playing 87.7% of the available minutes. He's just not leaving the floor for this team, regardless of their situation. Shooting about 36-37% from long range. Has a 24% usage rate and a 28.3% assist rate. He's definitely a guy that we want to look at. All right, next game on the slate, last game on the slate, VCU versus Utah. Utah 7-point favorites and a total of 145.5. Now, we want Utah to win this game. Unless you're a VCU fan, then that's fine. But if you, just from a pure fantasy standpoint, we want Utah to win this game, because if Utah plays Indiana State in the NIT Final Four, both of those teams are going to score over 100 points. It's going to be a fantasy bonanza. VCU versus Indiana State, much less agreeable, much less exciting. I'm about done with this VCU team. Not sure about you guys, but I do not want to see them on any more slates. They do have some dudes. Overall, this team has been a bit disappointing, and we're going to have to look at some of their value plays. That's really where I'm going to have to look here. They got here by beating Villanova 70-61 and South Florida 70-65, despite the fact that Chris Youngblood had an amazing game, 28 points, and Kashawn Pryor had yet another double-double. Sean Barristow had 13, 6, and 4. Zeb Jackson had 14 and 4. Max Shulga wasn't great. Stop me if you've heard that before. Christian Furman had a solid 10 and 4. Joey Bamisile was struggled off the bench, but he played 25 minutes, and Tobu Lawal had 10 points and 5 rebounds. Now, with this VCU team going up against a Utah defense that can be lackluster and does give up a ton of fantasy goodness, I'm going to look to some of the cheaper options, and I'm going to look to fill that forward position with somebody like a Christian Furman, who's sitting there at 4-4, or a Tobu Lawal. He's 5'7", not as exciting. He clearly has more upside and a little bit more ability than Furman, but I don't know that he's $1,300 more better than Christian Furman. So at 4-4, looking at the game he just had against South Florida and knowing that Utah has some size in that front court, I think we see this be a game that Furman has to play over 20 minutes rather than maybe one of those 10 to 15-minute type of games. So I do like him in that regard. We got to keep him out of foul trouble. That is going to be the big thing for him to be end up being a viable play. When you look at the overall rates there, his usage isn't great, but he has a 10.5% offensive rebounding rate, a combined rate over 20%, elite block rate numbers, and he shoots about 60% from the field. He gets a lot of bunnies. Fouls called rate is 4.2 fouls per 40. So tread lightly there. But the nice thing is he is a starter. He does play regular minutes. We just got to keep him out of foul trouble. Earlier in the season, when they were playing teams like McNeese State, tournament team, Seattle, who's making a run through the CBI, Memphis, Boise State, he was playing 30-plus minutes in these games. So he's capable of doing so. It's just the emergence of Tobu Lawal has taken away from him quite a bit. Now, Lawal has much better rates than Furman, and this is part of the reason why he's been getting more minutes, even coming off of the bench for most of the season, playing 19 to 22 minutes. 21% usage rate, an offensive rating that was top 20 in the conference, a combined rebounding rate of 35%. His rebounding percentage numbers in the conference of the A10, top 2 and top 4 offensive and defense, shoots 64% from the field. That was 5th best in the A10, draws 4.5 fouls per 40, has a 6% block rate, 3% steal rate, can absolutely fill it up in all categories. However, 6.7 fouls called per 40. Doesn't give me a warm and fuzzy feeling there. One of those guys is going to get themselves into some foul trouble against this Utah group. Do we take the discount with Furman and the starter and run him and hope for the best? Or do we go with the second unit guy who has much more upside in Tobu Lawal, but we're paying a higher price? So when you look at the game logs, it doesn't seem to warrant that additional price point. Even the games where he really blew up, he's putting up 24, 25, which is good, 27, but they really jacked his price up for this game, which makes it really, really tough. This would be the matchup. Utah has struggled against all positions, guards, wings, front court players. We've been able to target against Utah a lot to great success. But I just have a little bit of a nerve-wracking feeling here paying that 5.7 for Lawal. So I think I'm going to go Furman and take that discount, hope for the best, and that it gets me some additional pieces up top that I can feel much better about. As far as the Zeb Jackson, Shulga, Baristow, Bamasili group, Joey B is only 5'8". He was pretty terrible against South Florida. You saw him in the title game loss to Duquesne's, 7 of 15. He played 30 minutes, 37 fantasy points. First round NIT game against Villanova, 17 points, 27 minutes, 26 fantasy points. Instant offense off the bench. When VCU goes cold, they need a bucket. They turn directly to Joey Bam. He is that guy. Now, if he's shooting, if he's ice cold, bricking shots, then that tends to lead to less minutes. They don't go to him as much. He does have he's improved defensively from when he was on Porter Moser's Oklahoma team, but he's still not the best defender in that regard. So if he's not hitting shots, you tend to see his minutes dwindle. When he is red hot, like he was against Duquesne's, that's when you see him playing those big 30-plus minute games. So I'm willing to take that risk a little bit on Joey Bam, playing him at 5'8", which is a price point that just has way too much upside against Utah. Utah should be able to score here regardless of how VCU defends. They're going to need Joey to hit shots to keep up with these Davon Smith, led Utah Utes. So Furman and Bamisil are the two that I'm looking at. Baristow gives us guard forward eligibility. He had the biggest game of seemingly his last, 3 months of the season. 13, 6, and 4 against USF. Do we believe he'll continue to do that when he's typically putting up, 15 fantasy points? Tough to trust. It is a good matchup, but I don't know if I'm there. Max Shulga's price continues to drop as DK tries to bait us. I used Max Shulga against Duquesne's in the A10 final and just cursed myself out time and time again. He played 36 minutes in that game, but awful. 2 for 8 shooting. He didn't do anything rebounds-wise. Just as bad as a game you'll see from a team's alpha that in, a long time. He hasn't been great since. He had 23 against Villanova, 15 against USF. Seems like that St. Joe's 41 is a long time ago at this point. It was only 10 days ago, 12 days ago. But I'm not probably looking to use Max Shulga. 6'7" is a price point where I think he will come up in optos and people will use him. And maybe he does go off, but that's one of those plays where I'm going to be underweight on. If he's chalk, I just want no part of that. Would rather find the 400 to Zeb Jackson if I'm going to pay for one of those guys, or just go with my guy, Joey Bam. Zeb Jackson's been nice, but paying 7-1 for him as well. It doesn't have a ton of upside there. Not incredibly in love with that play either. On the Utah side, now I mentioned there's 3 primary pay-ups that you can consider here. And I don't even consider Dre Davis as a pay-up, even though he is technically, right? Anyone over 8K in this slate. And he's my favorite. But the 3 guys above 8.5 between Keelan Boone, Kadari Richmond, and Davon Smith. Davon Smith is the option that I want to get to. I want to find that salary. I want to prioritize him. When I go to build lineups here on this NIT slate, it's going to be the first name that I click in, just so that I can know what I'm up against with building the rest of my lineup. Another triple-double against Iowa there, 19, 10, and 10. This guy has improved so much since transferring to Utah. It's amazing. I never would have thought he'd be anything more than a 6th man or maybe a secondary facilitator. He has been an absolute just dynamite option for this Utah team, and now we're considering paying almost $9K for him because he is blowing the doors off of slates. We just can't afford not to have him on a 2-game slate. Yes, it's VCU, but I don't believe that VCU is just this crazy elite defense that we need to be afraid of. Yes, they're top 50 in a lot of defensive metrics, but when you go back and look at the production that guards have had against them, Youngblood just dropped nearly 30 real points against them as their lead guard. The Villanova game, we saw it was Eric Dixon who did most of the damage, but TJ Bamba was hitting threes. Brendan Housen was hitting threes. Like, they didn't defend the perimeter all that well. Villanova just went away from it. Duquesne's in the game they lost in the A10 title. They did a nice job there for the most part. That was an ugly game, and Duquesne's was really balanced, but they gave up, 10, 9, 8, 6, 6, 7, like just a really balanced effort, more of an outlier option there. St. Joe's, we saw Eric Reynolds torch them for 18. So this VCU team, as good as they've been, I think they're susceptible, and I think Davon Smith is going to absolutely cook them. And whether that means he's scoring all the points or he's assisting on all the buckets, possibly both, I just think his upside's way too high. Making up the points, if you don't use him, is going to be extremely hard. And it is the hammer game on a 2-game slate. So if you don't have him and you're ahead, you may find yourself falling to the bottom of the standings very, very quickly if you don't. So that is my take on Utah and Davon Smith. Now you have a cheap price on Brandon Carlson at 7-2. Fresh off a 46 against UC Irvine. Iowa, he had 20 in 29 minutes. Now, he's been, kind of dealing with various ailments, right? The Irvine game was nice because he kind of struggled coming into that one. They were able to really dominate the Irvine front court and go to him and get him a lot of confidence there. 21 points, 11 rebounds, 5 blocks, like a very good Brandon Carlson game. VCU's front court, I think he'll do a nice job drawing fouls on them. Carlson's not somebody we typically see get into foul trouble either. So you could run this double Utah stack here because I think that 7-2 price will elicit a lot of ownership. I think a lot of people were talking 50, 60, possibly even 70% ownership on Carlson in single entry and high dollar. So it's going to be hard not to want to go to him there, especially if you go with a more balanced approach or you don't use Davon Smith for whatever reason, then you had better use Brandon Carlson. Raleigh Worcester continues to deal with his lower leg issues. Don't expect him to play. That means a lot of minutes for Gabe Madison will continue. He had 33 against Irvine, 42 against Iowa. He has 6'9" at Spendy, but he's playing extremely well. Again, if we get Utah versus Indiana State, you can see this is going to be an absolute just amazing video game-esque type of matchup. We need this Utah team to win. But it's going to be hard. I make, no promises that you'll be able to fit Madsen into your lineup as well. You're going to have to make some sacrifices here. And maybe that means you sacrifice the UNLV guys. Maybe you can't play Dre Davis. You want to stack Utah. I get it. There's going to be some plays that you just can't fit here. Lawson Lovering at 5'3". He makes sense as a value forward. Did really well against Iowa. He's stuck in this 20-minute role. That's basically what he's going to have to get. He was extremely efficient, 6 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists. It's certainly a good matchup for him. He, unlike Carlson, does have foul issues, but I do think at 5'3", he's worth consideration, and we'll have to probably use him in some capacity. You have Cole Bajema as a value at 4'9", typically plays around 30, 32 minutes per game. He had a nice outing, back-to-back games, about 20 fantasy points, pretty much all you could ask for Cole Bajema, so I'm okay using him at 4'9" if you want to. Kaida is only 4'6". He has this great, or he did coming into the last month or two, amazing overall fantasy point per minute numbers, great rates, always broke projections if you give him anything over like 20 minutes, but those minutes just haven't been there for him. They're not utilizing him whatsoever. I feel like this would be a game where everybody writes him off and doesn't use him, and he ends up going berserk in those 15 minutes. So I want to reserve some exposure to Kaida in some of those alt builds, but you can't use him in your main unless you're just totally, taking the risk and you feel confident in a read on him. You just can't use him there. And part of that reason is because Ben Carlson is splitting those secondary minutes with him, making them both pretty difficult to use. Ben Carlson is only 3'9", so I don't mind that play as well. Again, some of these cheap sub 4K plays, we're not looking for 5X. I mean, don't get me wrong. They give us 5X plus. Hell yeah. But we're really realistically in our mind trying to get, 9, 10 fantasy points and call it good. And if they give us more, awesome, but we need to be able to plan. Here's my lineup. They give me 10. I get those points made up from Dre Davis, Davon Smith, XXX. So that's kind of how I'm playing that. There was also some merit here to using Hunter Erickson, who's priced at 3.8 minutes-wise. He is getting a ton. Played 24 against Iowa, 18 against Irvine. Before they got bounced in the Pac-12 tournament against Colorado, he played 28. And the game before that they beat ASU, he played 24. So value-wise, we have that at the guard position that we can really utilize. We have a little at the forward position. We should be able to fit 2 or 3 of these guys above 7K that we want. As far as values, mine that I like the most, I mentioned Furman, and I think Erickson over Carlson and Kaida. I just like the minutes that Erickson's going to give us. I think he has a really good chance at 5X. The only value on this slate that I think could have an upside game would be Hunter Erickson, for what it's worth. All right, core-wise, real simple. Davon Smith, that's my pay up. That's where I'm going. Dre Davis, I will be fitting him. If you can't, I don't mind getting away from him. I just feel like Dre Davis is the play for Seton Hall. And then the third member of the core for me, as of this moment, is Christian Furman, because I want to give you another forward spot there, but Hunter Erickson will probably be there too. That's the 4 that I'm really going to be plugging in and then seeing what I can come up with around those guys. Now on Prize Picks, we don't have any props for these games yet. They only have the Sweet 16 Thursday, Friday. So there's nothing there. Maybe we'll get some props there in the morning. We'll see. What's up, Don? But as of now, we don't have anything. And I was going to look at DK props. Any Seton Hall players you see getting 5 rebounds tomorrow? Dre Davis. All right, so asking about some betting stuff. Yeah, so Dre Davis rebounds over 5. You're looking for over 10 points. Any of the players? So that Dre Davis is my favorite in that Seton Hall game. His 15.5 might be a little high, but let's look at his rebounds here. 6.5. It's plus 105. So I like that. I think he does flirt with 8, 9, 10 rebounds in this one. I know Dylan Adewusu offers 4.5 at minus 140, which is possible, but I just have a lot of trust in Dre Davis right now. As far as players who are going to score 10 plus points, I don't know if you have some bonus at the sports book that you're betting there, but there are a couple that I was going to mention here for DK before talking a little bit about Thursday. Joey Bam over 11.5 points at minus 120. Davon Smith over 14.5 points at minus 125. And then Max Shulga under 12.5 points at minus 120. Am I holding a grudge against Max Shulga? No, but I don't think he's going to do very well. Even though his matchup against Utah is great, there's like something semi-broken about him. And if I think it's going to be a Joey Bam game, that means it won't be a Max Shulga game. So 2 overs and an under in that game. Dre Davis over 6.5 rebounds. Plus money, certainly like that. See if there's any good player combos here. Now, there's been 1 assist plus rebounds that's been fairly solid for players like Jamal Shed and other high peripheral style players. For example, Dre Davis, 7.5 assists plus rebounds prop. Now, it's minus 140, so maybe you want to parlay that with something, but that seems like a pretty big gimme. When you look at what Dre Davis has been doing, pull up his logs. 11 rebounds and an assist against St. Joe's, 6 rebounds and 4 assists against St. John's, 7 rebounds, 3 assists against DePaul, 7 rebounds, 2 assists against Villanova. He had the 4 rebounds, 1 assist against New Mexico, which wasn't as great, but typically you're seeing him hit that number over 7.5 rebounds plus assists. In this game with UNLV will have some physicality to it. I think there is just a lot of upside for that number. Clearly, DK does too, as they priced it at minus 140. So there is some opportunities there to get that. And you say Davon Smith says 13.5. He's probably going to flirt with a triple-double, so that number won't be very high, but I don't usually like to screw with anything that high myself. But I think that is it for the player props there. I don't want to just play everything. We did absolutely crush Jason Kent props tonight for Indiana State. Laddered his points and his 3-point prop, which is over 0.5 threes. And we also hit Ryan Conwell over 16.5 points. So we are doing well in the NIT, and we're going to continue to do so here. All right, so that's the NIT slate. Let's talk a little bit about Thursday. I'm not going to keep very long. I only plan to really be on for an hour tonight because it is just a short slate there, and we're going to have a full breakdown with guests tomorrow. But I do want to get a little bit into this Thursday slate. So let me pull this up. By the way, contest-wise, $20K to first $20 tournament, $2K to first $5 tournament, $3K to first 44. Lots of opportunities there to still make money. Now we're dealing with smaller slates, so a lot more overlap. Have to be aware of that. That's a little bit, disappointing. When you go from the huge slates to the smaller ones, it's a bit of not a shell shock, but a weird feeling, but you'll adjust to it very quickly. And it's a 10K to first 222 there. So lots of opportunities. Now, first look at the Thursday slate here of the Sweet 16. Pricing is definitely tighter at the top. Not that they've priced a bunch of guys super high. Like, 9-1, that's the highest for Terry Shannon, 8-9 for Jadon Leday, 9K for Sears. But what they've done here is they've boxed everybody into this range. So you can fit the players that you want, but you're no longer getting like the super 5-5 super amazing play. That play is now up to like 7K. There are some interesting looks there in the 5-7 range, like a Grant Nelson, but we've seen him really struggle not only with fouls, but just the way the tournament's played out matchup wise. Charleston and Grand Canyon, it just hasn't worked for him. So now his price has dropped to 5.7. I suspect he'll be really chalky there, but you have to keep in mind he's going to be going up against a North Carolina front court that can stuff him in a locker. That to me looks like a mega chalk bust. That was one of the first things I saw when looking at this slate. Identifying the various 8K plus options, there are a plethora that looked good. I do think we want to continue to look at Donovan Clingan, who has done very well in the tournament thus far. He's priced at 8.4, and 2 early fouls can absolutely wipe away everything and end your slate immediately. He is going up against Jadon Leday and SDSU. I just have a lot of faith in this UConn team going up against the Aztecs, and I do believe they're going to win. We have some cheapies to look at, though. If you don't want to go to Clingan at 8.4, which I understand, there's risk there at that price. We have 3 different options below 7K. So when I said the pricing was tight for some of the upper echelon guys with the amount over 8K, if you go with a more balanced approach, the pricing is not very tight in that regard. Cam Spencer is only 6.9K. That to me is way too low. Yes, he's had by his standards, mediocre tournament. But what does that even mean? He scored 28 fantasy points in each of their first 2 games. He's taken 21 total shots, 11 total threes, 9 total rebounds, 7 total assists, 4 total steals. That's not a 6.9K player by any metrics. He plays 30-plus minutes in close games. You saw him play 33 against Northwestern, 26 against Stetson. Neither of those were particularly close. In the game against St. John's, where they got pushed late, he had 36 minutes against Marquette before they extended the lead in their last, 5-6 minutes. He played 36 minutes, and against Xavier in what turned out to be a blowout, but it was close for, maybe 3/4 of a game. He played 33 minutes. So you're getting a guy at 6'9" gifted to you that's going to play 35 to 36 minutes in this game, because I think the Aztecs will be in it for a while. And I think this is one of those games where Spencer is going to have to hit shots. He hasn't been required to hit shots. He's super clutch, and we haven't had to see that in these games just yet. Look for him to deliver. I'm going to be all over his props, and I'm going to be all over him as a DFS option here at 6.9. GPP-wise, Alex Caravan is there. The Caravan game, I said this earlier, the Caravan game is coming. You haven't seen him produce particularly well lately. He's only 6'3", which is a steep discount. He hung a 41 on Marquette earlier this month, so he certainly has that upside. He had a 35 against Georgetown, a 33 against DePaul. Granted, those were 2 lesser opponents, but I think he can absolutely put together a huge score here. I have a lot of faith in Caravan. Might not pull the trigger there in a main build, but I'm absolutely going to have a lot of Huskies on this slate. And Caravan, Spencer, to me, both way too cheap. And that brings us to Stephen Castle. Had an 11 against Northwestern. He had foul trouble all game long. He gets a little bit excited. He's at 5'9". It's not a slam dunk play at 5'9", because at this point, I think he is probably a 6K player in this matchup and on this roster, being that he's 4th in the pecking order at best, 6th at worst. So he's not the lock that Cam Spencer is, but at 5'9", it would be silly not to have some exposure there. So looking at it, the Huskies have several cheap options that we want to at least consider. What do you do with Jadon Lede at 8'9"? I would say that's tough to play him, but 40-plus fantasy point upside. Maybe people are spooked about the matchup against UConn. He has been putting together huge numbers. Granted, Yale and UAB are not UConn by any stretch of the imagination. So you have to figure out how you want to approach that with Lede. He draws fouls at a ridiculously high rate, a scary rate. And that's what makes it really worrisome to play Donovan Clingan, because Lede is just really good. And it's not even ED-esque that he gets calls. It's because he has amazing footwork and he just makes guys get befuddled. They miss. He pump fakes. He does all these things to draw these fouls. Clingan is disciplined. UConn is disciplined. So he's going to have to bring out his A game here, but that's one matchup that I'm very intrigued by to see how it goes. As far as the rest of the Aztecs go, you have Reese Waters there as a value at 4-1. We sort of mentioned him against Yale there. He's playing about 20 minutes. It was just 9 fantasy points. Not great. UConn's definitely one of those teams I don't like to target against. So if you want to go into it like Leroy Jenkins, gung-ho, Jadon Lede's your mark. Otherwise, I don't think you can use anybody against UConn. Certainly not on the Aztecs team. We're going to get into 2-game slates. We're going to get into these showdown slates. We're going to have to target guys against UConn, but at 4 games, we don't quite have to do that just yet. Other first looks here, Clemson, they're cheap against Arizona. PJ Hall, we haven't seen an explosion game. He's been under 20 fantasy points in both of Clemson's games, which makes their run even more like mind-blowing. Their star has played 19 minutes in each of the first 2 games. He's been in horrible foul trouble, which is something coming into the tournament we had mentioned. Specifically said, hey, I love PJ Hall, but he's been fouling a ton lately. He doesn't look like himself. He struggled a bit. He's not staying on the court. These foul issues, they might rear their ugly head. They have. New Mexico did a good job. Baylor did a good job. What it's doing is just wrecking his peripherals, and that is why he is not putting together the type of fantasy production that you've come to expect. But that does mean his price point is 7-3. But foul trouble does not get any better against a team like Arizona that's going to want to push the pace and drive to the basket whenever they can, initiating contact. Don't love this spot for PJ Hall, but that price is tasty. Ian Scheffelen at 6'6". I do like the price for him. Him and Jack Clark will have to deal with Omar Ballo. Scheffelen, typically not the guy to get into any kind of foul issues. He does have versatility as a 3-point shooter as well. Really like him. Chase Hunter has been fantastic. One of the key reasons that they have advanced like they have. 39 minutes against Baylor. 5 of 10, 3 of 5 from deep, 7 of 8 at the line. Chase Hunter, he went from last year having irrational confidence and being a really solid option to falling, off a cliff with the addition of Joey Girard, learning to play next to a high volume shooter like Joey Girard. It took him time, but he's figured it out, and now he's playing the best basketball of his life at the right time. Absolutely like him at 6'4". That's a great price. Jack Clark at 5'4". That's a great price. Somebody who's going to be able to give us 20. I feel pretty good about that. And that leaves Joey Girard at 6'5". Really not that interested in him. It would be Hunter, Scheffelen, Hall, or Clark for me. Arizona, Caleb Love got off to the start. He got off to the start that we needed him to against Long Beach State. Followed that up with a solid 30. He's only priced at $8K. They dropped him $700. That's a little light. Expect him to be highly owned. Now, Clemson has done really well on opposing guards. I expected them to struggle in the pick and roll against New Mexico. Didn't happen. I expected them to struggle against Baylor's 3-point shooting. Really didn't happen. Now, Kobe Walter had a really nice game. But the problem was for the rest of Baylor, outside of him and Ray J. Dennis, who only shot 2 of 10 from long range, but he got to the foul line a lot. They got minimal production from anyone else. Jaden Dunn completely shut down. Jalen Bridges, one of the worst games he's had. Yves Missy gave them nothing. Their bench, nothing. So aside from Walter and Dennis, Clemson decided to just contain everybody else. Now in the New Mexico game, they decided to shut down Jalen House, knowing that as he goes, they go. So Clemson and Brad Brownell has done a fantastic job. They're going to know Caleb Love is the key cog to this team, similar to Jalen House in New Mexico. They're going to lock down. But with that being said, 8K for Caleb Love, that's just way too much upside. I have to get exposure to him. We'll go more in depth in that tomorrow, but Caleb Love stands out as a really elite play. We have value in KJ Lewis and Jaden Bradley if we want it. Kashad Johnson and Pele Larson are cheap, and Omar Ballo at 7-9, battling against that Clemson front court. Now, he was terrible against Jaron Holmes, got absolutely punked time and time again. That's led to a price reduction of 7-9. Clemson doesn't have a Jaron Holmes, but they do have guys who are not shy of physicality. We'll see how that shakes out for Ballo, but I do expect a semi-bounce back there at 7-9, but I do not see him as a priority by any means. Then we have Alabama, North Carolina. Bama getting past Grand Canyon. I didn't expect it. I didn't want it. I really wanted that Grand Canyon team to win. I thought they would, but I have to give it up to Coach Oates. They held that Grand Canyon team to 61 points. I was expecting both teams to be over 100. Like, I legitimately thought we would start with a track meet. Teams would be knocking down shots, and we'd go into NBA Jam mode, and that would be a wrap. Similar to the Charleston game. I mean, they scored 109 against Charleston and 96 to that team. They did it with defense. They did it with Mark Sears, who was absolutely ridiculous. Now he's going to be going up against RJ Davis. How do we find a way to roster both? RJ Davis at 8.2, Mark Sears at 9K. Looking at the rest of it, this is where it gets tricky. You know, Leday's in a tough matchup. Terry Shannon's in a tough matchup against Iowa State. Marcus Damascus played as good as anybody, but he's playing Iowa State. UConn, we know Klingon and Newton. They're in tough spots as well. I think Mark Sears is clearly the top pay up on this slate, and you have to keep riding him as good as he's been, and you got to find a way to pair him in this game with RJ Davis, because this so clearly reads like a Sears versus Davis battle all game long. In the second half, game on the line, trading buckets. I just don't see it going any other way. This is going to remind us of like a Marcus Page battle against, you know, Villanova's guards a few years back. Like, this is going to play out really similar to that, and I'm extremely excited to see Sears versus RJ Davis. When I begin to make lineups there, and I've already started playing around with it, those are the first two names that I've been trying to click in. You have some discounts with guys like Aaron Estrada, who's been phenomenal over the last month of the season. Nick Pringle will have to come up huge here against Armando Bacot. I do not expect that. I don't think Grant Nelson will. That means the North Carolina front court should dominate here. Latrell Wrightsell will be available here against North Carolina, but dealing with more injuries here. He was smacked in the face there. I don't know that he got a concussion, but Wrightsell's been dealing with injuries a lot. So we'll see how that shakes out and how that affects him. Does give us a value in Rylan Griffin, who's there at 4.9. Not particularly exciting, but he did put up 22 against Grand Canyon, and I would expect him to play 30-plus minutes there if Wrightsell is limited in any capacity. North Carolina side, I already mentioned, I want all the RJ Davis that I can get, but Armando Bacot, I don't think there's anybody on Bama capable of stopping him in the front court. I think they need to go to him as well, but they can't trade twos for threes either, so that's where I believe RJ Davis comes into the mix. Harrison Ingram is an elite GPP look at 7-1, 5 of 7 from downtown in that game against Sparty, reminding people that, yes, he can bang down low. Yes, he can grab rebounds. He can score, but this kid can absolutely knock down three-point shots as good as anybody and can get as hot as anybody, which gives them a whole nother element that teams just have to prepare for. You have to guard all these options. Cormac Ryan can hit threes. Jalen Withers has started to come into his own. There's just a lot at play here for this Tar Heels team. So it's going to be tough for Bama to put a defensive effort together to stop it all, but this is a really good spot to absolutely stack. But obviously the options are very expensive. Seth Trimble is there at 3.5, played 17 minutes. Perhaps we see him get closer to 20 minutes. Elliot Kadu's minutes have kind of fizzled a bit here. He doesn't offer much offensively. I don't think he's elite enough on defense to warrant being out there. Not that Trimble's some sort of offensive dynamo himself, but he's definitely taking minutes from Kadu. And when it comes down to it, we've seen at the end of games Trimble playing more. So there is merit to using him. I couldn't imagine playing Kadu at 5.1. Trimble at 3.5 might be worth that risk there just as a value piece in an up-tempo game. Illinois versus Iowa State. We'll go into this more in depth, but first look, Terry Shannon's been ridiculous. 9-1 against Iowa State. I don't know how we can do it, but the guy barely if ever, the last month or two of the season. Scores below 40 fantasy points, 30 real. Did it again against Duquesne's in a game that was never close. Morehead State, they got pushed there early, really wrecked them. The problem here with Illinois is their defense has not been to snuff. Now, Morehead State, they outlasted them, but they were giving up a ton of points. Duquesne's, they just don't have the offensive options there to compete. Iowa State, defensively, they're going to clamp down on these guys, but they have offensive options to also compete. Maybe not so much to Min Lipsy, who we know is hit or miss. Kashawn Gilbert, who has really stepped up the last month of the season, become a true leader for this team. He's going to be leaned upon heavily here. And then Milan Momklevich, he has become more of a three-point option, more of an offensive weapon for this team. You've seen he's hit 2+ threes in 4 straight games, 3 of 6 against Baylor, 4 of 8 against Houston in the title game, 3 of 9 against SDSU, and then 2 of 4 in that game in which Wazoo was up. It seemed like Wazoo was going to pull that out there. And then what happened? The Cyclones just wound down. They wore them down, and all of a sudden the Cougars couldn't score. And I'm worried for the Illini that something similar is going to happen. Like, they're going to get out to a lead early, but the Cyclones are just going to keep coming. That's what they do. They grind you down and they just keep coming, and they have the options on offense now to do so and keep up with teams. They'll need some contributions from Curtis Jones, who sits there at 5'7", and they'll need someone to emerge from the Robert Jones, Hassan Ward, Trey King group and give them good solid minutes in the front court to deal with those, Coleman Hawkins, Dane Danger, who may see some more minutes here against the Cyclones. They're going to need to get a very good, above average game from one of those guys. All of them are foul risks here, but I do like Hassan Ward, who sits there at 4'9" in 18 minutes. They needed him in his size against the Cougars. He delivered 7 points, 6 rebounds, a block, and a steal on his way to 18.5. Ward is the front court Iowa State play that I would want to look at if we're going to go in that direction. You do have a super punt in Damarian Watson. Near min price played 18 and 14 minutes in each of the first 2 tournament games for the Cyclones. Looking at prize picks for that one, there are 2 that stood out immediately. Now, they have those Goblin plays, which are lower payouts but lower numbers, and they have those Demon plays, which are higher payouts but higher numbers. There were 2 that I kind of zoned in on right away that I thought these look pretty interesting. PJ Hall, over 11.5 points. That is a Goblin play, so again, less payout, but they're going to hand us a number like that. That just seems way too appealing. So 11.5 points for PJ Hall. I am all over that one. And Cam Spencer, who I truly believe is going to put up a magnificent game here against SDSU, 9.5 points, which is also a Goblin play. I like the over 9.5. He's got a regular, so 9.5 the Goblin, 13.5 his normal, and then 15.5 is his Demon play. I think he hits all of those. This is the one I've identified as the best, similar to Jason Kent tonight. I think Spencer puts up like 18 to 20 real points, so I'm just going to hit the over on all of his point props there. I feel very, very confident that he's going to put up a big game here, and he's going to be who I hitch my wagon to and lean on. So those are the 2 that I really kind of just zoning in on. Like RJ Davis's Goblin plays 17.5, Sears 17.5. Like, they're both expected to just absolutely put up huge games, 20 plus. So I won't probably touch those, but there are some intriguing ones here. Friday has a few that are somewhat interesting as well. A guy, Mo Diarra, over 9 points, but we'll get into that here throughout the rest of the week and break it down further for you guys. As far as the NIT games go, and we have a CBI final, by the way, and and then I think the CIT game, which is between Norfolk and Purdue Fort Wayne. Utah is 7-point favorites against VCU. I think Utah wins this game, but I don't know that they are 7 points better than VCU as much as I don't like them. I think this one's closer than that. So I do like VCU +7. Not a super confident one there. I don't want to bet just to bet, but of the 2 NIT games, that is the one that I like the most. I'm more so on those props. Now, the Sweet 16, first day 1 there, those 4 games, I like Clemson +7.5 with the way that they've been playing. I actually like North Carolina -4 against Bama. I think that Bama's little run here is about to end. And I like Iowa State -1.5 versus Illinois. No bet on the UConn game there because I think they just win and probably cover against San Diego State because I just think they're going to bulldoze everyone, but I don't want to touch that. All right, so that'll do it for tonight's show. Short, easy, and efficient. We will be back tomorrow night to break down the 4-game Sweet 16 slate in depth, in detail. We will also have multiple prize picks, multiple bets, and prop picks throughout with a co-host. You will not want to miss that. That'll be about 10 p.m. PST, late night for you East Coasters, but keep on grinding with us. We'll be live every day the rest of this week, and you can see or count on some short form content to come out, some 1-minute videos that I've been working on, and lots more in terms of projections, write-ups, and overall player pools. Thanks guys for your continued support. Appreciate it, and we will see you tomorrow.